Donald Trump is in clear and obvious cognitive decline, and while the mainstream media refuses to give any real coverage to that fact, there is one person who is consistently begging them to with what he says every day, and that's Donald Trump, who is now outwardly talking about his decline and showed the best example, or maybe worse, of the fact that his brain is made of pudding today, forgetting who the president is. Yes, Donald Trump has lost his mind now more than ever, and he is losing it over a blow to his term, which is blowing up a secret plan of his and sinking everything. We are going to get into what is just such a delicious story. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into the latest example of Trump just showing off his cognitive decline, I want to start with Fox being forced to cover it in a clip that, if you haven't seen already, oh boy, you're going to love.
Because you're anything but. All right, so I do have a question. I tried to get an answer out of you on radio. Okay, the question is, when did you notice Joe Biden's cognitive decline? And don't change the subject and deflect. When did you really notice it?
Well, I think it was through all of the times that Donald Trump has fallen asleep in public and talked about, magnets getting wet in the last few,
oh my gosh.
My mom had dementia, so I recognize it.
Stephanie, this is not, it's a very good deflection. You're a professional.
You know what else is great about
Biden's
decline is that Trump is all over the Epstein files, and I'm wondering if they're going to release those. Are you covering that tonight?
Not really, because the woman that apparently they're talking about is the one that said he was a gentleman and never did anything wrong. And the person that had a grudge was the guy that got thrown out of Mar-a-Lago 25 years ago. And by the way, when you get thrown out of a club in Palm Beach, Florida, that's kind of a big deal. And it's very humiliating and embarrassing. And he was a convicted pedophile. So I'm not exactly putting a lot of gospel truth in what he said.
Trump was mad that he was stealing his girls, but
There is not a lot better than watching Sean Hannity squirm as the truth is broadcast on Fox for the first time since, I guess, 5 p.m. when Jessica Tarlov is going back and forth with Jesse Waters. But I don't know how Fox thinks that they can run away from Trump's cognitive decline when they post his statements and take his speeches live. I've actually found that more so than any other outlet, Fox is willing to cut away because they just don't want their viewers confronted with the fact that Donald Trump is as stupid and declining as he is. And it's not offensive or, out of line for me to use those words. They're just the right words to use. Donald Trump, in fact, is the one who is bringing our attention to the obvious cognitive decline that he is in. While the White House has worked overtime to cover up his medical reports and hide information, Donald Trump has lost it so much that he just blurts out about his MRI. And while you might have seen this clip before, I think it's important to watch with the context about we're about to check out Donald Trump's obvious decline and him talking about his MRI.
If we denuclearize.
Mr. President, could you tell us why you needed to get an MRI? I understand that the results were good, but what was it for?
Because it's part of my physical. Getting an MRI is very standard. Well, you think I shouldn't have it? Other people get it.
Typically an MRI
I had an MRI.
Part of your body.
Here's what the story is. I had an MRI. The doctor said it was the best result he has ever seen as a doctor. That's it. But I had an MRI as part of my standard yearly, or I think they do it every 2 years, but I have the physical every year, and the result was outstanding.
I don't know who in the White House is briefing Trump on what he should or should not be saying, but he certainly should not be talking about his MRI, which Carolyn Leavitt, nor the White House's own physician, decided to bring to the attention of the press. And more so than just the fact that Donald Trump went through this advanced scanning is the fact that he spent more than 3.5–4 hours at Walter Reed. Former White House doctors have come out and say that all basic digital imaging tools that would be needed for this basic, as Donald Trump called it, what is it, his second annual physical, which you don't take 2 annual physicals, that kind of takes away from the annual part. But anything that Donald Trump could have had done, any test that he could have had taken, any imaging that was needed could have largely taken place in the White House. So why was he gone for 4 hours? Why did he travel 15 minutes there and 15 minutes back if he has so much going on? He literally said the other day, you can't bother me with the Epstein files. I'm running the country. I got other important stuff to do. But you had time to look at your brain that's breaking and then not tell us about it? Well, why? Well, it's because Donald Trump continues to show us that he's forgotten where he is, what's going on, and who's president, including in 2020. Trump wrote in a meltdown this morning on Truth Social over his failed redistricting plan, "I will be strongly endorsing against any state senator or House member from the great state of Indiana that votes against the Republican Party in our nation by not allowing for redistricting for congressional seats in the United States House of Representatives, as every other state in our nation is doing, Republican or Democrat. Democrats are trying to steal our seats everywhere, and we're not going to let this happen. This all began with the rigged census. The rigged census. We must keep the majority at all costs. Republicans must fight back." Does Donald Trump realize that in 2020 he was president? So if the census was rigged, he was the one rigging it? This is just yet another example of Donald Trump either not remembering that he was president, not remembering what he did as president, or maybe worst of all, not knowing what is happening in our politics. Donald Trump maybe doesn't even know what the census is. Donald Trump just knows that he's mad about it. He's losing it. He's freaking out. Now his handlers are rushing to save him, of course, not to the betterment of our country, but because what Donald Trump's actual focus on, what he is giving his attention to, is remodeling. But his handlers had to step in. White House staff had to kill Trump's even tackier plan for the Oval Office. White House staff were forced to step in to stop Donald Trump from hanging a potentially damaging chandelier in the Oval Office, according to a new book by Republican strategist Scott Jennings. And I'm rolling my eyes, by the way. The problem wasn't aesthetic, it was physics. The ceiling couldn't hold it, Jennings writes, in A Revolution of Common Sense, his new book, which I'm sure not a lot of people will read. Imagine that conversation in the Oval Office, like Stephen Miller and Susie Wild sitting Donald Trump down and saying, "Donald, you know, we've been thinking about this a lot, but one of the plans that you want to undertake is incredibly damaging. It would be potentially harmful, and we can't let you go forward with it." And in your mind, not if you were Donald Trump, because if you were Donald Trump, like cartoons would be going off, and you'd of course be looking at yourself in some figurative mirror. I don't want to know what happens in Donald Trump's head, but you'd be thinking, okay, is this about the ICE raids that have literally killed people? Is this just about, you know, me having National Guard shooting rubber bullets? Tariffs are causing harm. 50,000 people are going to die because of my health care cuts. What is the dangerous plan that you must step in and stop? No, it's the chandelier. It's the chandelier. That is when the White House staff will go, "This has gone too far." Not going to let that happen. And it's also funny, and I say funny loosely, you know what I mean, that as they bulldoze the East Wing, literally ripping the White House apart, they're like, I don't know, this could hurt it. Yeah, isn't that like your thing at this point? Isn't your thing to do lasting damage to the White House, to like leave your mark, like fascist, we're here, spray painted on the walls? I know your guys already smeared poop around the Capitol during your January 6th walkthrough or tour or whatever they want to call it, as they've tried to rewrite the history books. But what Donald Trump can't rewrite, obviously, is a lot of these Republican districts. And funny enough, and this is actually funny, Texas's undertaking was so long ago, I know it was only months ago, but so long ago, the maps that they proposed, that the swing in sentiment against Donald Trump, his unpopularity, means some of those districts that they redrew might actually turn into Democratic districts because Donald Trump is so unpopular. But that's what they're seeing in Indiana. But if you want to hear someone actually from Indiana talk about electoral damage that conservatives have done, what Pete Buttigieg had to say right here about the Electoral College was just so interesting. And then I want to hear what he had to say about J.D. Vance. But listen to this clip.
These weird things like being the only presidential democracy in the world where you can come in with the second most votes and get to be president, and the person who got the first most votes doesn't. That makes no sense, obviously, right?
Well, it does. To be fair to small states, it does make sense.
No, it doesn't.
No, it does, because you have
It doesn't even benefit small states. It just benefits some states.
Without that possibility, the small states would be run over entirely by the large states. No, I mean, no. I'm not a particular partisan for.
No, I'm sorry. Small states
for South Dakota, but it's
South Dakota has been screwed by the Electoral College, and I'll tell you why. That's
a very esoteric fan club.
Two reasons. First of all, the way it works, you know, a small state like South Dakota gets less votes than has less importance than a medium state like Michigan, where I live. But also because if you live in South Dakota, what matters more to your future? How many presidential candidates come through and stage rallies in a community near you? Or the fact that soybean prices are cratering because of a president whose political career was catapulted by the fact that he got to be president in the 2016 election, even though he got the second most votes?
I think that in the context of all Donald Trump has broken and an appetite to overhaul a system that he properly diagnosed as rigged. Donald Trump was right about that. Now, he was right and then rigged it for himself, and he was wrong about what was rigged. Donald Trump said the system was rigged against him, a criminal billionaire that's actually who the system protects. But I think Pete is right in this moment to talk about big structural change, to talk about shifting our politics in a real way. I certainly have an appetite for that. I think a lot of people do. I think that's the right approach. And I know sometimes democracy can sound like a lofty word that we're separate from, but talking about, as Bernie Sanders has, and you see candidates like Abdul al-Sayed or Zohran Mamdani, of course AOC always does this, talk about how to make it tangible, how to make it connected to people, I think is important right now as we see politicians picking their voters and not the other way around. I think that's so important. And so important to call out the phonies who are willing to rip you off as they do it, like Buttigieg did to Vance right here.
Do you think that J.D. Vance is a fascist?
If it's convenient for him to be a fascist, he'll be a fascist. Maybe later on he'll go back to being a Silicon Valley Democrat. He'll be whatever he needs to be. Right? I mean, this is a guy who went from Donald Trump as Hitler, what he said, to, you know, I have seen the error of my ways. He'll be something new later on, maybe. But
we need to make politics as Democrats closer to people. We need folks to feel more connected, not less. I feel like that is a great problem that we are undertaking right now, whether it be through Citizens United and the disproportionate levels of wealth inequality that have allowed our country to be run into the ground by billionaires, both economically and politically, or gerrymandering, rampant electoral malpractice by the Republican Party as we see ahead of these midterms. Whatever it may be, people feel separated from their politics. And I think the Democrats who will be successful aren't just those who talk about affordability and people's lives in the day-to-day, but connect politics, a real aspirational politics, a politics that can be better to their lives in a way that they can feel and change and shape and be a part of. We desperately need that. We're going to talk about that in the show. If you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. If you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'll see you soon.